morning. The priority is not that they make no noise. It's just great that y'all are here. Yeah. Thank you. Well, Shabbat Shalom. It's hard to believe that we're all here because we're here in a pretty much empty sanctuary. I don't know if anyone has had time for a walk this morning, but it is delightful outside. I know I'm competing with a tough competition, which is the beauty of the outdoors right now. So thank you for being here and for davening. You know, Shabbat is a day where we celebrate creation. Shabbat's the day that we acknowledge that we are creatures, that we are finite, and that the world around us is purely a gift. And that was easy for me to see and to imagine this morning as I walked in past these beautiful parks here in Highland Park. And a lot of our psalms this morning will meditate on the same, the beauty of creation, the kindnesses we have experienced in being alive. And as we start with the morning blessings on page 103 in our Shabbat Sidurim, we're thanking God for the capacities that we have to be conscious, to be alive, to be Jews and to be free. If you'll please stand, we'll say them together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan li shivei bina le'avchin bein yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bein chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisroel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokev kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokal aretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anotein le'av koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam me'avir shenatem. Utzaneinu hayom bechol yom lechenu chesed urachamim beinecha ubeinei kol roenu tagmilenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisroel. Good Shabbos. How are you, Sarah?
Hey,
good to see you.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm told to believe that there's people watching.
Hi, people watching.
There's probably 2 people, but we'll dive in, and it will be a good time. We're going to go to the blessing for the Torah, the individual blessing on page 107. On a day when we probably will not be reading Torah, we say our individual blessings first thing. 107. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah v'harevna Adonai Eloheinu b'divrei Torah v'vinu v'fi amra b'Yisrael. I'm not sure that we all know this, so let's take the time to do the English side of this first blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, who has provided us with a path to holiness through the observance of mitzvot and instructed us to engage in the words of Torah. May you make the words of your Torah sweet in our mouths, in the mouths of the house of Israel, your people, so that we, our children, all the children of our house of Israel, may come to know your name and study Torah for its own sake. Baruch atah Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people, Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein ha'torah. Let's do that next paragraph. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, who's chosen us from all peoples, giving us the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, who gives the Torah. And then, having said the bracha, we go straight to do the mitzvah. Good Shabbos, Dr. Josh. How are you? Good to see you. And if you'll join us midway through page 107, we'll immediately fulfill the mitzvah as we say the priestly blessing, a piece of Mishnah and a piece of Talmud. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Would you read together with me in English the Mishnah from Peah 1? These are the deeds for which there's no prescribed measure. Leaving the produce at the corner of a field for the poor, offering the gift of first fruits to the temple, pilgrimage festivals on the 3 festivals, deeds of kindness and love, and the study of Torah. You know, that first mitzvah, which Pei is all about, leaving produce at the corner of a field for the poor, is particularly important right now, as society can't even have contact with each other, to make sure that we are somehow making sure that on the margins of society, people who are reduced to the margins are able to survive from also our marginal income. Sarah was telling me yesterday that she's quite worried about her friends, musicians, who have had all their live gigs canceled, which I understand is the mainstay for musicians. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I heard in NPR.
Yeah, so all my friends who have canceled their live gigs, they've been posting on Facebook Live, and they've been leaving their Venmo information and PayPal information, and I've been, I tried to do it anonymously, but you just outed me on my...
I didn't say who, so
okay.
we know, we're learning about the concept of tzedakah at this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've been giving tzedakah a lot, mostly to my musician friends who have lost a lot of income for the loss of gigs.
And what I love so much about how Sarah is giving the tzedakah is that she's doing it immediately when she sees the need, which is one of the things we talked about on the Thursday's call. How do you give tzedakah was one of the questions. And we have a federation fundraiser, which is great. But tzedakah really isn't something that you give quarterly. Tzedakah is something that you give immediately to the need, as much as you're able, wisely to give. And the importance of the thing is giving immediately. So it's not about fixing the other person's problem so much as contributing to them. And let's do the Talmud piece in English too. These are the deeds that yield immediate fruit and continue to yield fruit in time to come. Honoring parents, performing deeds of kindness and love, attending the house of study morning and evening, providing hospitality, visiting the sick, helping the needy bride, attending to the dead, probing the meaning of prayer, making peace between one person and another, and between husband and wife. And the study of Torah is the most basic of them all. It's funny, that list always feels timely, but it feels especially timely at this moment. All right, we turn to page 120 for Psalm 30. Mizmor shir Chanukat Bayit leDavid, aromim Adonai kidi litani, v'lo simachta oivai li. Ma betzadi betamai birdati el shachat, hayod chafar hayagid amicha, shema Adonai choneni Adonai hayazech li. הפכת מספדי למחולי, פתחת שקית תזרני שמחה, למען יזמרך כבוד ולא ידום, אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. If you're saying Kaddish, if you'll please stand and join me in saying Psalm 23. Let's see. Let me see if I can find you a page number that you can actually use. 4s. Okay, the reference. Yeah, great. Okay, we can find Psalm. Thank you. Psalm 23 is on 233. Great. And if you'll say that together with me on the English side. The Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God lays me down in green pastures, leads me to still waters, renews my life. Guides me in right paths, for that is God's way. Were I to walk through a valley as dark as death, I would fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You would spread a table for me in full view of my besiegers. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai in the fullness of time. May their memories be a blessing. If you'll please rise, page 122.
Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu se bereshit.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch Omer ve'oseh.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch gozer kayem.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch merachem al haaretz.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch merachem al habriot.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireav.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch podeh umatzil.
Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam melech harachman melech hashem Eloheinu.
Yachid chei ha'olamim melech meshubach umfardet shemo hagadol Baruch atah Adonai melech mehulal batishbachot.
Turn with me to page 125, Romamu. Exalt, lift up, and honor God's name at his holy mountain.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Berachum epeverachum velo yashid v'bel yashiva po velo ya'ir kol chamato Adonai declare chamechem in zechor v'netorah Elohim mekashem Shashev Gimul Al Yehim Al Adonai Yeshu Alam Chabirchatecha Seila. Adonai Tzvahot Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yaneinu Ve'yom Koreinu. This next paragraph on 126, if you look at the second full paragraph in English. Deliver and bless this people whom you have made your own. Shepherd them and lift them up forever. Hoshia Samechu Reched Nachaltecha Uremunasem Ad HaOlam Nafsheinu Chikal Adonai Ahashreyam Shekachalo Ahashreyam Shadonai Elohav Ani V'chastecha V'tachti Yageli V'Bishuatecha Ashir L'Adonai Ki Gamal Alai. Turn with me to page 132. Sarah, let's do the whole song. The reason for that is we would have been reading Vayikra had we had the ability to continue reading this week. And one of the things that it focuses on at the very end of last week's Parsha is how they moved through the desert according to the signs given to them over the Mishkan. So very much our topic right now in our cycle of reading Parshiot. And this is a story very much about all the stages of coming out of Egypt. And so that and Pesach coming up, let's sing the whole thing. 132, please stand. Great. I will do the first two and the last two, and you can do the stuff in the middle, because I don't know that part. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu le'Elohei ha'Elohim, ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai ha'adonim, ki le'olam chasto. Le'osei niflaot gidulot levado, ki le'olam chasto. Le'osei hashamayim b'tfuna, ki le'olam chasto. Le'rokal haaretz al hamayim, ki le'olam chasto. Le'osei orim gedolim, ki le'olam chasto. Et Hashem neshamem shel hayom, ki le'olam chasto. Et hayoreach v'chochavim lem shalot balayla,
Ileo Olam Hasto, Limake Mitzrayim Bivchorehem, Ileo Olam Hasto, Vayotze Yisrael Mitocham, Ileo Olam Hasto, Beyad Chazaka Ubizroa Netuya, Ileo Olam Hasto, Legozer Yamsuf Ligzarim, Ileo Olam Hasto, Behevir Yisrael Beitocho, Ileo Olam Hasto, V'nier Paro V'chelo V'yamsuf, Ileo Olam Hasto, Lemolichamo Bamidbar, Ileo Olam Hasto, Lemake Melachim Gedolim, Ileo Olam Hasto, Vayarog Melachim Adirim, Ileo Olam Hasto, Lesichon Melech HaEmori, Ileo Olam Hasto, Ul'og Melech HaBashan, Ileo Olam Hasto, V'natan Artzam Le'nachala, Ileo Olam Hasto, Nachala leYisrael Avdo, Ileo Olam Hasto, Shebeshifleinu Zachar Lanu, Ileo Olam Hasto, Ve'yifrekeinu Mitzareinu, Ileo Olam Hasto, Noten Lechem Lechol Basar, Ileo Olam Hasto, Hodu Le'el Hashamayim, Ileo Olam Hasto. You may be seated. Page 134. Mizmor Shilei Yom HaShabbat, Tov Leodot Adonai Ulezamer L'Shimcha Elyon, Nagid Baboker Hazeh V'Melach V'Alilot Alei Ashor Alei Hanagid L'Nagid Ish Ba'ar Lo Yidav, Chasir Lo Yavin Et Zot, Bifroach V'Shayim Ekmo Esev Yatzit Ukol Po'alei Avein Le'ashmid Dam Ade Ad Atamarom Le'ola Adonai. At the carrot. Tzadik atamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yiskei shetulim bevet Adonai V'chatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenun b'seva deshenim v'rananim Yashar Adonai Dori Velo Avlatapo. Page 136, Ashrei. Can we do it responsibly? Back and forth?
Yeah, Ashrei Ashrei Beitecha Od Yalucha Selah.
Ashrei Am Shekacha Lo, Ashrei Am Shadonai Eloha.
Tehillah David Harumimcha Elohai HaMelech V'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed.
B'chol Yom Avarchecha V'alala Shimcha Leolam Va'ed.
Gadol Adonai Hula Me'od ולגדולתו אין חקר.
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך, וגבורתך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודיך, ודברי נפלאותיך עשיך.
ויזוז נורתך יאמרו, וגדולתך ספרנה.
חרבתך יביעו, בצדקתך ירננו.
חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדול חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ורחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
דומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעיתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קורב, לכל אשר יקראו ואמת.
רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד.
יראת אדוני ידבר פיו, יברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד.
ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה. Would you turn with me to the third of the 5 Hallelujah Psalms here on 139. 139, Psalm 148.
מן השמיים, הללו במרומים, הללו כל מלאכיו, הללו כל צבאיו, הללו שמש וירח, הללו כל כפי אור, הללו שמי השמיים והמים אשר מעל השמיים. יהללו את שם אדוני כי הוא ציווה ונראו ויעמידם לעד לעולם. חוק נתן ולא יעבור.
God commanded, and they were born. He set them in their places forever, fixed the boundaries that they shall never cross. I'm enjoying in particular getting out to see the stars these days, and the stars are the image in this psalm of something that never changes, at least from a terrestrial perspective. We don't see them change. They're always there. They're constant. And I find that engaging creation for me in a focused way right now is a way to notice what isn't changing at a time that other things are changing. And it's been an extraordinary blessing to have time to be out of doors in an Alabama spring these days. Vayikra keren lemoti lachosidav libnei Yisrael am krovo. Hallelujah. Turn with me over to Psalm 150 on page 141.
Hallelujah, hallelujah,
hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, El Bekocho, hallelujah, Birkia Uzo, hallelujah, Vigvoratav, hallelujah, Kerov Kulo,
Hallelujah,
hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
hallelujah, b'torka shofar. Hallelujah,
Benevel vechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, beminim beugav, hallelujah, 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 tziltzilei shama, hallelujah, b'tziltzilei trua, kol anshama, de hallelujah, 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 kol anshama, de hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam Amen ve'Amen. Baruch Adonai Mitzion Shechin Yerushalayim Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Melech Yisrael Aseh Niflot Levado. Uvaruch Shem Chodo Le'olam v'Malei Chodo et Kol Haaretz. Amen ve'Amen. If you'll please rise on page 142 as we prepare for the Song of the Sea, we come with a prayer from David and a prayer from Nehemiah. And if you haven't read them in a while in the English, I would suggest doing so. Vivarech David et Adonai le'nei kol hakahal vayomer David Baruch atah Adonai Elohei Yisrael Avinu me'olam ve'ad olam lecha Adonai gadol hagavura ve'atiferet hanetzach ve'hahod. Ve'atahu Adonai Elohim asher becharta b'Avraham ve'hotzeitem mirukastim v'samtet shemo Avraham ve'matzat levavo ne'eman lefanecha ve'charoti mo habrit. Ve'hayam bakata lifnehem ve'yavru b'toch hayam b'yabasha ve'ebrotvehem yishlachtu b'mtzlot como even b'mayim azim. 143. Vayosh Adonai V'hayar Yisrael et hayad hagdolah asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim ve'yeruham et Adonai v'yaminu b'Adonai uv'Moshe avdo.
Az Yashir Moshe
Uv'nei Yisrael et hashir hazot l'Adonai v'yomru lemor Ashir l'Adonai Igahoga sus verochvo Rama vayam Ozi vezimraya Vayehi li lishua Ze'eli ve'on ve'hu Elohei avivarom emenhu Adonai Ishmelcham Adonai Shemo Merkavot Paro v'chelo v'ravam Marie Karbi Tushim Yadi Hinashot Bruchel Hachisim Yam Salelu Kofer B'Mayim Adirihim Michamocha Bo'elim Adonai Mikamocha Nedar B'Kodesh Nora Teilot Osef Ele Ay 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 Adonai Imloch Leolam Voed Adonai Imloch Leolam Voed Ki l'Adonai HaMeluch HaMoshel Bagoyim Ve'elu Moshim Be'er Tzion Lishpot et Ha'aresav Ve'ital Adonai HaMelucha Ve'hay Adonai Lemelech El Kol Ha'aretz Bayom Ahu Yadonai Echad U'Shemo Echad Page 145, Nishmat.
Nishmat kochai, tivarech et shemcha Adonai Eloheinu,
ve'ruach kol basar, tevaher derabam zivrecha malkeinu tamim min haolam v'ad haolam ha'ta'ed. Hame'orer yeshenim mekis nidamim Mashiach ilmim samantir asarim somecha noflim zokef gerufim v'echadam ha'arbonim אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבי אבותינו, לברך את שמך על אחת מאלף אלפי ריבי רבבות פעמיים הטובות שעשית עמי ואבותינו, והימנו. 146. ממצרים גאלתנו אדוני אלוהינו מבית עבדים פדיתנו ברב זנת בשמך. מי ידמה לך ומי ישווה לך ומי יערוך לך אל הגדול גבור וברא אל עליון כוני שמיים וארץ נהללך נשבחך נפארך נברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קורבי את שם קודשו. 147. הואל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול ויכול שמך הגיבור לנצח הנורא נורתך המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא.
שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו וכתוב רוננו צדיקים באדוני לישרים נאווה תהילה בפי ישרים תתהלל ודברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתרומם ובקרב קדושים תתקדש ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל ברינה יתבהרתם חמכנו בכל דור ודור שכן חובת כן חובת כל היצורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו להודות להלל לשבח לפאר לרומם להדר לברך להלל ולקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך.
Please rise. Ishtabach 148.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו
האל המלך הגדול הקדוש השמיים והארץ.
ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך מלכי העולמים.
Blessed is the God who gives life to all worlds. We turn past the Kaddish and the Baruch Hu to page 150. And with these two, there are two blessings before the Shema. The first pertains to light. The light coming through these windows this morning has been terrific, and the light of the setting sun on those windows last night was also beautiful. I hope that you get out in the light. Today will be a hot one, going into the 80s, but enjoy the light. And then we'll turn, of course, to the blessings to do with love. Why do we start with light? We might have thought that perhaps other faiths were focused on light. We don't necessarily, occasionally you get a metaphor to describe God as light, but that's not our key claim here. It's instead that light is perhaps the most universally given blessing that the Creator gives to all creatures, connecting human, animal, plant life, animating everything with energy day after day. And so what we say throughout this blessing is HaMechadesh betuvo bechol yom tamid maseh bereshit, the one who renews each and every day the work of creation, literally charging us up during the day with the energy of the sun. And that's why we start with light, the blessing that it is, the way it connects to creation. And then we head into the human realm of love. So that's where we are on page 150.
The light here got brighter as you were talking about that, which it's a divine intervention.
Yes, or faulty switches.
No, it's divine intervention. It's not faulty switches.
Okay, you're right. It's probably divine intervention. So you may be seated for these blessings as we head into the Shema.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol Kol yoducha v'hakol yishabchucha.
Join me in the English of the second paragraph. Each day, O God, you raise the gates of the east, open the windows of the sky, bring forth the sun from its place, and the moon from where it sits, illuminating the entire world and all of its inhabitants, whom you created, with mercy. With kindness you illumine the earth and all who dwell on it, and in your goodness, day after day, you renew creation. Sovereign, you alone ruled on high from the very beginning, praised, glorified, exalted, since earliest time.
In kircha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh, ve'ein zulatcha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba, efes birtecha go'aleinu limot ha'mashiach, ve'ein domeh lecha moshienu l'tchiyat
ha'metim. 151.
El
Adon al kol ha'masim, baruch u'mvorach b'fi kol neshama, todo betuvo, Malei olam da'at utfuna, sovevim oto amikahei al chayot HaKodesh, nedar bechavod al hamerkava, zeichud umishor lifnei kiso, chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo. Tovi me'orot shepara Eloheinu yitzaram bedar bevina uvhaskel koach ugvura natan bahem liot moshlim b'kerev tevel meleim zivu mefigim noga naheziram mehol ha'olam Smeichim betzetam v'sahasim bevoam osim be'emar etzon konam Ber b'chavod notnim lishmo Zola verina lezecher malchuto Kara l'shemesh vayizrach ora vehikin Zorat halvana Sheva notnim lo kol teva marom Tiferet ugedula Seraphim ve'ofanim ve'ayot HaKodesh Anai, anai, ay, ay, anai, 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 Let's read the English of 152. My question for us this week, in a week where we already stopped doing everything, we tend to distinguish Shabbat and weekdays primarily by the things we stop doing, or by being at home, or by being with family, and those things don't work as the distinction currently between Shabbat and the week, if you're working from home and seeing way too much of family. Like, hang on, just go away. Could I have a little space here? It would be nice sometimes.
Your wife is right there, Rabbi.
I'm channeling her. She knows. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the distinction between Shabbat and the weekdays? And I think that this paragraph helps us towards an answer. So if you'll read it together with me on the top of 152, from Who Ceased. The one who ceased work on the seventh day and ascended the throne of praise, robed in majesty for the day of rest, calling Shabbat a delight. Such is the distinction of the seventh day, that God ceased all work. And so the seventh day itself praises God and says, a song of Shabbat. It is good to thank Adonai. Let all creatures likewise celebrate and bless God, offering praise, honor, and glory to God, the ruler, creator of all, who in holiness grants peaceful rest to the people of Israel on the holy Shabbat. May your name, Adonai our God, be hallowed. May the thought of you, our sovereign, be celebrated in the heavens above and on the earth below. Through the praise due you, our Redeemer, is beyond any offered by your handiwork or the lights you have made. May they continue always to sing your glory. Turn with me to page 153. as we'll come to the middle paragraph here, it says, each turns to each other and gives the other permission to hallow their Creator. I am just so thankful for the handful of you who have turned out. I'm also thankful there's only a handful of you. But last night, talking to the walls was rough. So it is good to daven with you and make eye contact with each other. It's great to be in a room, and I'm noticing it more than usual, just to say it is good that each of them are here and powerful and mighty to proclaim with a pure language the sovereignty of God. Titbarach Tzurenu Malkeinu Goaleinu Borei Kedoshim Mishtabach Shim Chalad Malkeinu Yotzer Mishartim Vasher Mishartav Kulam Omdim Berum Olam Umashmiim Beira Yachad Bekol Divrei Elohim Chaim Umelech Olam.
Kulam ohavim, kulam berorim, kulam giborim, v'chulam osim beima uvira ritzon konam, v'chulam potchim et pihem, v'kedusha uv'tehora, v'shira uv'zimra, umvarchim umshabachim, umfarim umaritzim, umakdishim umamlichim,
et shem ha'el amelech hagadol, hagibor v'hanora kadosh hu.
וכולם מקבלים עליהם על מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה ובנימה קידושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ויקרא
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ כבודו.
האופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת שרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו
לאל ברוך נמות יתנו
למלך אל חי וקיים פועל גבורות עושה חדשות בעל מלחמות זורע צדקות מצמיח ישועות בורא רפואות נורא תהילות אדון הנפלאות.
אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Amen. 154. With an abounding love you have loved us.
Ahava rabba avtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chem lagidol avitara Chamalta aleinu Avinu malkeinu Ba'avor avoteinu Shebatchu v'cha Shebatchu v'cha Avinu malkeinu V'telamden chukei chaim Kein techonenu telamdenu Avinu avarachaman Amrachem rachem aleinu V'tein b'libeinu lehavin Lehavin lehaskil lishmoa Lilmod ulelamed Lishmor velasot Ol kayem bekol divrei Talmud Toratecha be'ahava Ve'ha'erinenu betoratecha Ve'dabek libeinu b'mitzvosecha Ve'yachel levaveinu Le'ahava u'lira et shemecha Ve'lo nevosh le'olam va'ed Ve'lo nevosh le'olam va'ed Ki be'shem koshecha Hagadol v'hanora b'hatavnu Nagila v'nismecha Nagila v'nismecha v'shuatecha. We gather the four corners of our talit, holding our tzitzit in our left hand and gathering our entire consciousness to full focus to declare the Shema. Yahavienu shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'solichenu komemiut le'artzenu ki el poel yeshuata uvanu v'charta mikolam belashon v'keraftanu l'shimcha hagadol Selah be'emet lehodot lecha u'liachedcha be'ahava Baruch atah Adonai abocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha v'beitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לדודפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. והיה אם שמוע תשמעו אל מצוותיי, לאהבה ולעובדו. השמיים על הארץ. ציצי. ציצי. ציצי, ראיתם? שכחתם את כל מצוותיו. למען תזכרו, עשיתם כל מצוותיו. למען תזכרו ועשיתם כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ויציב ונכון וקיים וישר ונאמן אהוב וחביב ונחמד נעים נורא אדיר מתוקן מקבל טוב ויפה דבר זה לאלוהים אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו צור ישועתנו לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וכיסו נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת ודבריו חיים וקיימים נאמנים נחמדים לעד עולמי עולמים אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצרנו צור ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם Moshiach 158
ממצרים גאלתנו אדוני אלוהינו מבית עבדים פדיתנו כל בכוריהם הרגת בכורי וגאלת ים סוף פקדת ידים ידין הבאת
Tehillah le'Elyon Baruch Hu Barach Moshe u'Miriam u'Bnei Yisrael Lecha anu shira b'simcha rabba ve'amru kulam
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh norati Lord Osef elei
Shira chadashah shibichu geulim
L'shimcha al sefas hayam yachad kulam Odu v'im lechu v'yamru Adonai imloch leolam poed Tzur Yisrael kuma bezrat Yisrael Ufdechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kadosh Yisrael. Let me just let you know what we're doing the Amida. The Amida may be prayed out loud beyachid, and that's the position we're going to follow today by one speaker. So I'm going to go through so I can get through the whole Hebrew, but we won't be singing it together. It'll be a quiet spoken version, so it's going to sound different than you're used to, for lack of a minyan, okay? And you can also say them quietly together. Hopefully the mic will pick me up. So the Amida begins on 159. Baruch Ata Adonai Kal Yisrael. I'm sure that is picking up. Adonai Sfasai Sifsach Ufi Yagid Yiratecha. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Velohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Velohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Velohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור, הנורא, אל עליון. ומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות, ומביא גורל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה, אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם, אדוני, מחיה מתים, אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה מתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. ישמח משה במתנת חלקו כי אבן נאמן קראת לו. כליל תפארת בראשו נתת בעומדו לפניך על הר סיני. ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת. וכן כתוב בתורתך ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת בי נפש. ולא נתתו אדוני אלוהינו לגויי הארצות ולא הנחלתו מלכנו לעובדי פסלים וגם במלאכתו לא ישכנו ערלים. כי לישראל עמך נתת באהבה לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת. עם מקדשי שביעי כולם יספעו ויתענגו מטובך. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו חמדת ימים אותו קראת זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו רצה ממלכתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך. סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בשועתך, ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך, ואנוכו בא ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם, והשב את העבודה לדביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון. ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו לעולם ועד. צור חיינו מגן אישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך ונספר תהילתך על חיינו המסרים בידיך, על נשמתנו הפקודות לך, ועל ניסך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת, ערב ובוקר וצהריים. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, המרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך, מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברך ויתרומם שמך מלכנו, תמיד לעולם ועד. בכל החיים יודוך סלע ויהללו את שמך באמת, האל ישועתנו בעזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות. שים שלום בעולם, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל. בכינו אבינו כולנו כאחד באור פניך, כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו תורת חיים ואהבת חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים בשלום. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
Say shalom bimromav, huya say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru amen. Ya la 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 la. Oh, say shalom bimromav, huya say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru.
All right, we come to the Torah service where we would have been reading Parshat Vayikra. We're going to have to think about how to make up for these lost weeks, because being on a triennial cycle, we have a 3-year project here, folks, of reading the whole Torah. And we didn't read last week, and we're not going to read this week. So I don't know exactly how we'll account for it, but we need to over a 3-year period.
We'll do the uniennial. That's not what it would be called.
We'll do the whole thing next year.
The annual.
Have extra reading the 3rd year. Yeah, that's probably.
We'll bring in
right.
some Chabad readers. It will be extra fast.
We have a couple, super capable readers sat here this morning. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's good to dive in with you. Shkoyach. So, since we're not reading Parshat Vayikra, and since the pressing matter at hand is also not in the Parsha, I wanted to take some time today actually to talk about Passover, because I think that Passover is pressing for very many people today. And I have a couple of resources that I want to share, and which will also be shared with you via email. But so I want to engage you in a conversation about it and launch you on the process of preparing for your Seder. And I don't have enough space here, so let's get this right. So, for who is Passover your absolute favorite holiday? Anyone in this room? Oh, thank goodness, there's one. There's at least one. Okay, fine. We'll go through the others. Yom Kippur? Yes. What's that? Passover is also Sarah's favorite. Okay, great. Purim? Okay, great. And Rosh Hashanah? Okay. I actually guessed each of your favorite ones beyond the Passover. So for most American Jews, Passover is our absolute favorite holiday. Unfortunately this year, Passover is not going to look like everything that you have always dreamed about, and that you've probably been looking forward to already for several weeks, if not months. However, I think that there is something special about this year's Passover that we can grab a hold of. I brought a couple of resources. I brought my favorite Haggadah to share with you this morning. I brought some totally new resources, which Bethany has helped me find, including how to celebrate a Seder alone. It's kind of a downer, but this is a great resource should you be stuck alone with no one to talk to, with no one to share a bracha with, some of the directions that you might take it in a more reflective, meditative direction. And if there's also this terrific Haggadah that Bethany brings to me called the Jew Belong Passover Haggadah, which has a certain justice angle in it, which is great fun, causes us to reflect more broadly on our world. And I want to read to you from these different things. But before I get into these 4 different Haggadot, that it really does take a whole Torah reading table to fit, I just want to frame our whole approach. So Bethany pointed out to me this week that a friend was observing on Facebook that this year's Pesach will look a lot like Pesach Mitzrayim instead of Pesach Ledorot. In the Talmud, there's a distinction between the original Passover, the Passover in which they really had to rush to get out of town, in which they slaughtered the lamb and not only ate it, but also put its blood on the doorposts, right? The one we read about in the narrative of the Torah. The one that would lead to the moment of awe standing at the sea that we're still singing about. And all the other Passovers. Truly in the Gemara, Pesach Ledorot really probably applies up until the destruction of the temple, but that's not important, that's just a footnote. For most of us, we can call Pesach Ledorot what we have inherited, right? With a Seder, with gathering friends from far and wide, with no particular bother about making a pilgrimage up to Jerusalem. That's what would distinguish it between it and the period of the temple. And there's a lot of similarities there if you begin to think about it. Just think about that first set of families gathered in Egypt. How did they celebrate? Huddled in their houses. They weren't inviting guests either. Right? This year, really, people should not have over large numbers of guests because of the rules about mitigating the spread of the virus and the danger involved in possibly, touching food that then causes infection to others. But that does not mean canceling Seder. That just means doing Seder small. But Seder small doesn't have to be Seder less, right? It doesn't have to be less good or less fun. This year's Seder probably shouldn't be about the food and how delicious it is. It probably shouldn't be about the guests and who all came to be at our table, and all out-of-town travel should be canceled. Instead, it's just you and your house and the Haggadah. You should have some food, right? But that's not what will make it awesome, if it is awesome this year. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for people who haven't led Seder before to do so. Perhaps you don't routinely lead it at your house. You go to someone else's house. You say, I'm single, I'm widowed, I am not learned enough to do a whole Seder, so I'm going to go to the Feinbergs, right? Or the Ivkers. But this is a great year to host your own Seder. The place that I would suggest that you spend most of your effort is on the Magid, the part where we tell the story of Pesach. For those of you who are traditional, absolutely tell the whole Haggadah, but make some extra time for that discussion, because I think that's the heart of every Seder, truly, but this year it really has to be for everyone, or else, where's the fun? That's kind of your only option left, is to focus on the Magid, the discussion, the retelling of the story. The obligation that we say every year, right, is that we are obligated to see ourselves as if we came out of Egypt. And so we need a certain kind of discussion that makes that possible, right? We're supposed to actually imagine being that original generation. Can you imagine, actually, that when they huddled in their houses at Pesach Mitzrayim, they didn't actually particularly want to be huddled in those houses? They would have far preferred to be going about their day-to-day business. When they ate their Passover foods, the lamb, they would have far preferred perhaps to have other food, right? And actually, as they leave Egypt, quite possibly a good chunk of people don't particularly want to leave Egypt. We hear about that through the entire trek through the wilderness. Why did you make us come out here? Yes, you brought us out of Egypt, but does everyone agree that was a great idea? Of course not. Egypt was bad, but at least the food was good. I mean, what is this thing you're serving us here, right? There's a reason that we eat hard bread when we get to our Seder, right? It's to remind them that actually things got harder in the process of coming to liberation. This isn't a banquet designed to be the most delicious thing you've ever eaten. It's a banquet designed to teach you something more important than you've ever learned before. It's really a teaching tool, our Sedarim. So how can we do that? If we too are the analogies between Pesach Mitzrayim and ourselves go even further, right? That first generation to experience Pesach were so concerned about the plagues that had been rolling through Egypt, one after another, coming in 3 waves, and coming that night to a crescendo. Something truly terrible was going to happen. It wouldn't just be that the natural world was upended, that all kinds of miracles destroying their food supply, even blotting out the sun, all kinds of miracles damaging the reputation of Egypt, where the Nile, which was a source of life and wheat, actually just turned to a stinky mess that couldn't even water the crops. After all those things had rolled through, God was actually going to make it personal. It was a fight between him and Pharaoh. And so God would take his child and break his heart and finally send his people out of Egypt. And so everyone hearing that this would happen, and by now believing everything that came out of Moses' mouth, to get away from the angel of death, retreat to their homes. And how's the angel of death going to know not to enter their house and take all the firstborns? Because you'll make a mark for it on the door. Now, we still have something marking our door, and we'll come to that in a bit. But they're clearly afraid, right? A lot of people now are afraid. I think it's important to acknowledge that it's fear. For many people, it's more than just anxiety, more than just boredom or isolation. It actually is fear. How can the Seder allow us to address that fear directly? I think it's important that we do take it on directly this year. I want to suggest that if you craft the Magid part of your Seder carefully, the storytelling part, that your family can actually have deep discussion, which allows people to open up, share about their fears, share about their loves, their passions, and connect more deeply with each other, making memories that should last a lifetime. Just think back with me to the basic framing story, the first moments of redemption within the Exodus story. Who enables us to come out of Egypt and to leave slavery? Obviously Moses, and Aaron does his part, but that's not where the story starts. It starts with a story of courage by 2 women, Shiphrah and Puah, the midwives, who are told, it seems that in this world everything was on pain of death, that they have to kill all the Hebrew boys. And in a context of fear like Pharaoh rules with, they should have obeyed him, but they didn't. They showed the antidote to fear, courage, in Hebrew, ometz lev. Courage is a goofy thing because courage is can easily slip into foolhardiness or excessive risk-taking, right? So actually, ethicists in general agree that courage is the only virtue which doesn't stand on its own. If you don't combine courage with wisdom, it's not courage, it's just foolishness. If you don't combine it with other virtues like kindness or humility, then it will easily just become brazenness, not courage. Courage, therefore, is really only a culminating virtue. It allows us to rise above the situation that we're stuck within, but only if we've also been trained on wisdom. So how did the midwives rise above the fear that everyone experienced in Egypt? The text says simply that they feared God. It's not that they didn't fear. They just didn't fear Pharaoh. They feared Elohim more. They were Yarei Elohim. They feared the God who'd given us morality, who'd given us clear, bright red lines of things we must not do, like take the life of another. And they said that that was a bigger deal than even the Pharaoh, the leader of their civilization. Those women kept a generation alive who would then go marching out of Egypt. Certainly their compassion played a role as well. The whole Exodus story starts in compassion. It also starts with profound courage from the least likely subjects, from a couple of women that most people never thought about, whose lives normally don't affect the course of empires. They're the women who like babies, right? They're the start of the Exodus. I think that's a big deal. I think it can show us some of the path that we can take to maintaining our seders courageously, also creatively this year. And they show us the way to having our virtues and our values properly ordered, where we fear God even more than the other things that we fear. I think that's how the Exodus can give us courage this year, to remember the story, yes, of Moses and Aaron, Miriam, but particularly of Shiphrah and Puah. The ways in which they opened up the door for redemption by remembering and fearing God. So as you gather over that Magid, I want to share with you a couple of tools that I particularly like. This is my favorite Haggadah, to remind us of the story of something bigger than just the moment of coronavirus and, who's, et cetera, who's sick and who's not. As you gather less than 2 weeks from now, I want to recommend you use this tool. This is my favorite Haggadah, used by Noam and Mishael Tzion, or crafted by them. The reason I love it is that it gives the most access points I have ever seen to engaging the traditional Haggadah. Here's a sample. And by the way, you can get this free on PDF right now through an email that you'll receive this week. Not sure if it'll look great printed in grayscale, but in any case, you can get it free, or you can order it with a site that we're also linking there. So this is coming, it'll be made accessible this week. It says the following on Halach Ma'anya. Remember that we point at the matzah and we say, this is the bread of affliction that our ancestors ate. And they bring this from Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik. He titles it, Needy but Not Poor. Although they may seem initially redundant, the two invitations that we give in Halach Ma'anya, let all who are hungry, kol dichfin in the Aramaic, enter and eat, and let everyone who is in need, kol ditzrich, come and celebrate the Passover, in reality are not the same invitation. Kol ditzrich means those who are in need, but not particularly in need of bread. Whoever is in need of bread, dichfin, is actually hungry. So there's tzrich and dichfin, right? Kol ditzrich refers to one who is alone, who has a lot of matzah and plenty of wine, but no home or family with whom to celebrate. There are indeed many ways to be included among the kol ditzrich. The invitation to all who are in need is not yete v'yechol, come eat with us, but rather it's to spend Pesach together with us. Yete v'yifsach, to celebrate with us. It's an invitation addressed to unfortunate, lonely people. They could be millionaires. It doesn't matter. Whoever's in need should come and celebrate. Halach Ma'anya is the renewal of a pledge of solidarity across the entire Jewish people. Solidarity between individual and individual, between the individual and the Jewish community as a whole. It's a proclamation that we are one people and that we're ready to help each other. Pesach night is a time of sharing. If the sense of solidarity, responsibility, and unity and readiness to share and to participate are not manifested or demonstrated, then the whole Seder risks becoming meaningless. That's just one example of a kavanah and a teaching that's brought here along the side. Many are not as intellectual as that one. I happen to like that one. Big surprise. There's also lots of cartoons in here, and this one I highly recommend for children, if you should have them at your Seder this year, and adults. But if you have children, totally grab the one with cartoons. What do you do if you're in that position of being in need and no one invites you to add one at their Seder? That could easily happen this year. There's this one provided by One Table, which in this case is about a table of one. This is the solo Seder Haggadah. I'm just going to read to you out of it. At the Magid, they ask some additional questions. I'm not going to read them all, just two. 4 more questions, they call it. Why is it that people around the world still live under oppressive regimes that limit their intellectual, religious, or economic freedoms? Why is it that people in my own wealthy nation go hungry with no bread or matzah, vegetables, or bitter herbs to eat? Those may sound like one question, but they're in different places around the world and in my country. This one also has a lot of poetry in it. We have William Wordsworth, Leonard Cohen, etc. I highly recommend this one, especially if you are alone this year, to use the Seder as a time for reflection. And there's an awful lot of art and poetry in that one. This is, I can't say my favorite, can I? This is Bethany's favorite Haggadah. This is the Vayikra Haggadah by Aryeh ben David. It is the most reflective of the Siddharim. If that last one we had was just reflecting on the condition of the world, and there's also a lot of poetry to draw our imaginative and spiritual side in, nonetheless, this one has the most reflection of a personal nature. So, for example, when we come to karpas, eating the vegetables, they ask the following question: what aspect of the natural world gives you hope? What's the most hopeful place that you have ever been? Bethany, you gave me a fantastic question on the way here, but I'm not sure which part of the Haggadah is it on? Oh, it's on Charoset? Great, okay. So when we come to take the Charoset, which they're explaining, right, it's the sweetest part of the Seder meal. This is the part where instead of, it's kind of the alter ego to the maror. So as we dip into the Charoset and get something truly delicious and part of the ritual part of the meal, we see the following here. The ingredients of Charoset are all mentioned in Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, the beautiful poem that many read at the end of the Seder. Many read, sorry. Shir HaShirim can be interpreted as a vivid and sensual love song between two people, or as a moving ballad between the Jewish people and God. Eating Charoset is in some sense ingesting this love song, making it a biblical love potion, a spiritual aphrodisiac. Why is that so? Because we actually take the ingredients for a traditional recipe of Charoset out of all the spices and such mentioned in Shir HaShirim. The face of someone who has fallen in love shines with hope, but often with the passing of years, the only spark felt with the first falling in love fades away. When we look at old pictures, read the letters written in early romance, we can often rekindle the flames of our passion. The Seder with its 4 cups of wine its reclining posture, eating of haroset, and lengthy discussion of the Jewish people's first date with God rekindles that love. And with all these love stories, and as with all love stories, hope is renewed. So when was the first time that you felt God's love for you? What about for the Jewish people? When did you feel that? Well, I want to answer that, not in order to talk about me, but because just talking about Seders about Haggadahs can leave us without a sense of what's personal. So when's the first time you felt God's love for you? Perhaps not the very first time. That's probably before memories start, but my first memory worth mentioning. And this might be how you share around your table, if you can create a place of trusting and sharing there. The thing I remember was one time, this is in Africa where I grew up, I remember sitting in the middle of a field, and there was just one tree in the middle of that, 2-3 acre space. And the tree wasn't very much taller than me, but I was sitting, leaning against its trunk, and I was singing a song. And I was just singing and singing. I guess no one was walking along the road that day, so I just sort of lost track of time. I'm sure you've never noticed this about me when we sing or when I do anything, that I lose track of time. And then I lost track of the words, and that really annoyed me. This was totally about to, be a buzzkill. Because how do you do a song without the words? And I just kept singing without the words. The words are kind of complicated. I didn't have a song sheet. I'd gone for a walk that day. And I just kept singing. And as I sang, I felt an extraordinary sense of God's pleasure with me, with everything around me, in the shining sun, that the words actually didn't matter. And I was totally surprised because I thought the point of the song was the words. I'm inclined that way, to think that. And what I learned that day was about nigun, that the words can fall away, but the song keeps going. That's true in so many ways in life. I found it to be true over the course of my life as well. Many times I've lost something and thought that I would lose the love of God, and that hasn't been so. The song keeps going, and the love is still there. That was the day that I recall very early on what it was to experience a perfect sense of God's love, and that has endured to this day, even if sometimes veiled. So you can see how this Haggadah is going to require you to reach a little deeper and give time for people. It took me 3.5 minutes to tell my story, right? You don't need all that many questions. But I think this is kind of the perfect Haggadah because it requires individuals to think and to answer. I think Bethany has a great preference there. So that one's called Hearing Your Own Voice. The Jubilong one will also be included in the resources, which is terrific. I'm not going to read from it now, though. Here are a couple questions that I would like to share with people and suggest that you use with your families. These are mostly drawn from that one. When we come to Halach Ma'anya, and I'll be circulating this in writing as well. When we come to Halach Ma'anya, we say, now we are slaves, but next year may we be free, as we come to the Avadim Hayinu, right? It says, what is one thing that you are stuck on? What has been your plague this year? Again, you can see that we're using an allegorical interpretation of it. But I think that if you ask a question like this, you can engage people to reflect a bit more deeply. And having a smaller Seder means you have time to hear the answers. You don't have 25 people. You don't have to just sing the next song. You have all night. So I suggest that question. And when we come to Maaseh Rabbi Eliezer, the story about how all those rabbis stayed up all night talking and just totally lost track of time, I asked the following question. With whom could you talk until dawn? And what's an idea? Just mention one that you might talk about. When you come to the 4 different children, right? The righteous, the wicked, right? the innocent and the one who doesn't know to answer. Ask this question. Where is the child inside of you? How would you like to be more like a kid? What part of you still has a child's unbridled optimism? And when we come to Vehi She'amda, right? They arose to destroy us right at the end of the Seder, but every time God stood up for us and spared our people in each and every generation, they suggest asking this question. Did you notice a moment in the past year when you felt like God was helping you, or helping the Jewish people, or helping the world? Was there a moment that you sensed a deep spiritual connection to something beyond? What was that like for you? Those are 4 questions that I'm suggesting that you ask this Seder. You might also be able to do it with family ahead of time, since I'm equipping you with the questions before April 8th, to email them out. This will come to you in your bulletin, so you'll have it written there. Those are questions that I think it's worth spending our time on, and spending a lot of time with, because they're rich, and they should connect us to each other. Just want to wrap up our contemplation of Pesach this way. Just like that first generation experiencing Pesach Mitzrayim, we also have something marking our doors. And like them, it also marks us out for protection. The mezuzah on our doorposts, right, are there for protection and to remind us of how to behave within these doors. To remember that our homes are holy places, places where the commandments apply. The mezuzah contains the Shema, the same text that we say twice a day. It calls our attention morning and evening to the fact that Adonai is God at all times, including this one. The mezuzah is both a reminder of God's protection of the generation who left Egypt, and a reminder for us of God's guidance in our life right now. It's a reminder that we can meditate upon day and night, allowing the presence of God and God's instruction to come into and enter our homes. So this year, as I enter my house and, of course, wash my hands, my intention regarding mezuzah is to allow the fear and anxiety that typifies our society right now outside the door, to let go of the terror that this virus has caused for many people. If we can do that, if we can leave it outside of our Seder and allow our Seder to be a moment of peaceful communication, one to another, even if that's with one other person, let our excessive anxiety go for a moment, then we'll enjoy the people that we have the privilege to live with. If we can listen to the thoughts of those we love and invite them to share their reflections with us, then I think we'll read the Haggadah this year in a new way, as a story of being liberated from fear, a story teaching us courage. So I want to bless you that you should have a beautiful Pesach this year, filled with sharing, with greater intimacy, and with deep learning and meaning. Shabbat Shalom. So at this time, we would normally pray for the ill or with the zchut of Torah. We can't use that blessing. But what we're going to do is use the same blessing for healing that you can use every single day, even from home, as you pray for people. And that's the blessing for healing that's in our Amida. So if you have your red Shabbos book, you can turn to page 274. And we're going to pray for the healing of those who are now ill. Do you have that, 274? Refoinu Adonai v'nerafei, hoshienu v'nivashea, ki tilatenu ata. Ve'ha'alei refuah shelema lechol malkuteinu. ויהי רצון מפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו שתשלח מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף לחולים. Didi Lori, Sue Tuck, Barney Bonfield, Leah Aviva Ba'ita Rachel, Avraham Bitran, Richard DeLalo, Bruce Fleissig, Scott Harris, Wayne Lassen, Sarah Bat Elchanan Vilea, Corey Rothman, Izzy Mae Sherman, Steve Spielberger, Catherine Bland, Gareth Klotz, Taylor Cabase, and Melvin Olshan, Robert Zivitz, Fred Friedman. And perhaps you have names of others who are on your mind at this time as we go around. Davida Bat Shifra. בתוך שאר החולים חזק את ידי העוסקים בצורכיהם, כי אל מלך רופא נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני רופא חולי עמו ישראל. May they experience a complete healing soon. Right. If you will join me in praying for our country on page 177. If you'd please rise. Let's say the whole prayer together. All 6 of us. Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessing on this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials, who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them to understand the rules of justice you have decreed, so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell upon the earth. May you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me. And let us say, Amen. Would you join me in praying for Israel on the left side of 178? We'll do it in English today, omitting the brackets. Avinu Shebashamayim, stronghold, redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel, that it be the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace, guide its leaders and advisors with your light and truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph, and bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with a lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. And let's continue to pray for peace throughout the world at a time when places are under hard straits, that they should have wisdom to know not to enter any conflict. We'll do this alternating lines. May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world. For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We've come into being to praise, to labor, and to love. Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture, I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you. Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream. Let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And let us say, Amen. going to do this. All right, we are now in Nissan, and I want everyone to know that. We are a couple days in. We did not have anything like a Rosh Chodesh celebration here this year, but you should know that we are now in the third day of Nissan. Page 181. Ashrei. Ashrei Yoshvei V'Seicha Hod Yalelucha Selah. Ashrei Am Shekahalo. Ashrei Am Shadonai Eloha. Teila David Aromim Chalo Hayam Melech V'Bracha Shimcha Leolam V'Oed. Gadol Anu Layim Al Meod Ve'Ligdulato Ein Cheker. Hadar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha. Zecher ravtucha yabiyu, v'tzidchatcha yiranenu. Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al kol masav. Kevod malchutcha yomeru, ugvuratcha yidaberu. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Einei kol elecha yesaberu, ve'ata noten lahem et ochlam be'ito. Tzadik arana bechol dracha, ve'chasid bechol ma'asav. Ritzon yira'av ya'aseh, ve'et shavatam yishma ve'yoshiyem. Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'yivarech kol basar, shem kodsho le'olam v'oed. V'anachnu nevarech ya, me'ata ve'ad olam, hallelujah. Bethany, you come here. It is permitted. You just do it silently. Cool. Tough. Very good. All right, we are going to do a silent Musaf Amidah. You can find that here on page 185. Bethany, would you join me up here for these final concluding prayers as we daven? Take that side. Be great. So we're on page 185. If you'll please rise. Do you want me to do a Bikol Yachid or not Bikol? What do you think? Bikol? All right, we decided it's good to hear the words, so I will say them kind of quietly, and hopefully you'll pick me up a bit on the mic. So on 185, we'll say this in a whisper together, not in a sung fashion. Adonai Svasai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tilatecha. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Hoel Hagadol Hagibor Hanoah El Elyon ומלך חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים סומך ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך פעל גברות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים. Skip a page. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש תיקנת שבת, רצית קורבנותיה, ציווית פירושיה עם סידורי נזקיה. מהנגי לעולם כבוד ינחלו, תואמי החיים זכו, וגם האוהבים דבריה גדלו בחרו. אז מסיני נצטוו עליה ותצווים אדוני אלוהינו להקריב בה קורבן מוסף שבת כראוי. יהי רצון לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו המשיב בנים לגבולם, שתעלנו בשמחה לארצנו ותטענו בגבולם, ששם עשו אבנותינו לפניך את קורבנותיהם תמידים כסדרם ומוספים כהלכתם. ואת מוסף יום השבת הזה עשו והקריבו לפניך באהבה כמצוות רצונך, ככתוב בתורתך על ידי משה עבדיך מפי כבודיך כאמור. וביום השבת 2 כבשים בני שנה תמימים ו2 סכומים סולת מנחה בלולה בשמן ונזקו. עולת שבת בשבתו על עולת התמיד ונזקה. ישמחו במלאכותך שומרי שבת וקורא עונג עם מקדשי עד יסתרו ומטובך. והשביעי רצית בו עמדת ימים אותו קראת זכר מעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו רצה ונמחתנו, קדשנו במסווסך ותן חלקנו בתורתך. סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בשורתך ותהל ליבנו לעבדך באמת. הנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך, ואנוכו בא ישראל מקדשי שמך, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם, ואשר את הדבר לגביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ותחזן עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו.
מודים אנחנו לך שתחו אדוני אלוהינו לעיר אבותינו ועם בהם.
צור חיינו מגן אישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. נודה לך ונספר תהילתך על חיינו המסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו ופקודותיך, ועל נסתך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלתך ותורתך שבכל עת ערב בבוקר וצהריים. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך, המרחם כי לא תמו חסדיך מעולם. ועל כולם יתברך שתרומם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. וכל החיים ידעו סלע ויעלו את שמך באמת. האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך ולך נאה להודות. שים שלום בעולם, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד באור פניך. כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו תורת חיים ואהבת חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת וכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך בעמו ישראל בשלום. לא, אני טוב בשמך. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Kadoneinu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu,
אתה הוא מלכנו, אתה הוא מושיענו, אתה הוא שקטינו אבותינו, לפניך אקטורת הסמים.
עלינו
לשבח לדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שבו עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
אין עוד על כן נגבי לך אדוני אלוהינו לתקן עולם במלכות שדי לפנות אליך כל רישי הארץ יקיר יקבלו עליהם ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו We're gonna try the Hebrew of Psalm 23. So if you'll turn in lieu of Kaddish over to page 233, we'll say Psalm 23 in honor of our departed loved ones. 233. Oh, that's easy to remember because it starts with the numbers 2 and 3. 233. So that's where we can find our in lieu of Kaddish from now on. This week, Temple Bethel recalls the following yard sites: Eva Alper, Carol Altman, Ann Baker, Bernice Barstein, Blanche Burke, Daniel Bernstein, Ruth Blender, Deborah Botnick, Martin Brill, Saul Charney, Dan Daneman, Juanita Daskin, Philip Davidson, Libby Danaberg, Riza Feinberg, Michael Fearman, Yaakov Feldman, Rebecca Gershon, Mary Ginsberg, Martin Goldman, Norman Hirschberg. Isa Horowitz, Nanette Hyatt, Boris Yoshpa, Ronnie Kasowitz, Saul Klinger, Goldie Chris, Mayor Laskin, Mary Leitner, Max Levitt, Frida Levy, Joyce Levy, Miriam Lilienthal, Seymour Link, Sarah Lishkoff, Alfred Long, Larry Lubell, Sam Marks, Gustav Meyerowitz, Melvin Olshan, Seymour Padov, Glavcha, Paramitina, Gus Raymond, Lynn Rosemore, Saul Sachs, Nechama Schlossberg, Isaac Schwartz, Diane Seidel, Herman Siegel, Florence Silverberg, Harold Silverfield, Joseph Soroti, Arthur Smolian, Selma Spielberger, Henry Spira, Leah Sulsky, Lena Trestman, Sam Warner, Maury Wiener, Jacob Weinstein, Alex Walensky, and Leonard Zarovsky. If you're saying Kaddish, or if you would have been saying Kaddish, please rise and try the Hebrew out with me. Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'mag letzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeit zalmavet lo irara, כי אתה עמדי. שבתך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. All right. Sarah, do we have some announcements? Precisely.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. We hope you continue to participate or virtually attend the various services and programs we're offering online via live stream, Zoom, or Facebook Live. Don't miss morning and evening Minyan during the week at 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. via Facebook Live. We also have a special house concert and Havdalah happening with Sarah Metzger. That's my name. At 8:30 p.m. Saturday night. That's tonight. Check out the Facebook event for details. She'll be streaming. I'll be streaming. I don't need to use that for the she pronoun because I'll be streaming via Facebook Live. And that should be archived for a little while. So if you aren't around, or if 8:30 is past your bedtime, or if you're on the East Coast, Mom, and 9:30 is past your bedtime, then you can watch it tomorrow, and it's all good. I'll forgive you. This week, we'll be wrapping up our Interfaith Learning Series for Lent and Passover on Love, Act, Repent. Rabbi Stephen will be facilitating the Repent portion. There's been some exceptional conversation that's emerged from these events. If you get a chance, please join us via Zoom at noon on Wednesday. Zoom info and the texts we'll be discussing prior to the talk. Okay. Yes. Sometimes there are typos on announcements. It's okay. We'll also be having Jew Curious class led by Bethany. Wave to everybody, Bethany. 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Then Thursday, Rabbi Stephen, wave Rabbi Stephen, will continue his discussion of Bob Dylan, making music out of chaos, at noon during his Beit Midrash 2.0 class. And how does it feel to be leading a class on Bob Dylan?
Pretty good.
All right, cool. Do you see what I did there? I did a Bob Dylan impression. I won't do it again, I promise. Zoom info can be found for both of these classes on the TBE website under the Adult Education Offerings, as well as on Facebook prior to class. Keep your eyes out for some online resources for Pesach. They'll be sent out to you next week via email. Rabbi Stephen talked about all of these great resources, and I'm personally really excited to share some of these with my family. We have some needs in the community that we'd like to share. Many of you know that food pantries are running pretty low on supplies. Grace Episcopal in Woodlawn has reached out to us. As many of the faith communities have shut down who help the Grace Food Pantry, they are desperately in need of canned vegetables and peanut butter for our neighbors in the Woodlawn community. The food bank is completely out of both, and these are really staples that families rely on. This pantry generally provides groceries for 120 families each week, so any and all help is greatly appreciated. You can contact Grace Episcopal Church Woodlawn through their Facebook page, or contact Brad, their food pantry coordinator. And thus concludes the announcements.
Anything additional we should mention? Great. I want to say thank you to Sarah and Bethany for their hard work at getting our services and other offerings live. Sarah's concert last weekend, Motzei Shabbos time, was rockin', and lots of people enjoyed it online. Hundreds of people enjoyed it online. Bethany's Havdalah 2 weeks ago was really special and cued us in that this is important. And Bethany got us these cool, techie glow stick things so that they can see your face incredible. And not just the silhouette of you while you're online. And Sarah's going to use that. And so Thank you for getting us up and going.
I brought it home last night, and Alan was geeking out about it, and he was like, this is what they use to take really good photographs of eBay things that they're selling.
Right. And there's several other players in getting us up. Everyone's been pulling together. Bob, the Kriegers, Kathy Fingerman have all been working extra to get it going. So thank you,
everyone.
Shout
out to all of our office staff who have been putting in so many extra hours to make sure that this that we can keep the doors open until we can close them officially.
Temple Bethel has an Instagram. That's weird. That's right. Since we can't hang out in person, we're trying to connect each other more over the social media. because social distancing really isn't the right term. It's physical distancing.
Right.
You said that last night, Sarah.
I did say
and
that
I
last
think
night.
you're right. It's physical distancing. It's the not, and that also, really beware of surfaces is the thing. But nonetheless, so as we're, our connections are more attenuated, we're trying to connect each other. We have a set of stories going on the Temple Bethel Instagram, check it out, about the humans of Bethel. You've probably heard of Humans of New York. It's like that, but for us. So it's a really big deal, right? This is going to be bigger than Humans of... No, it's not.
It totally is.
But it's really
I'm an
cool.
influencer.
And the first story is about me and Bethany. There will be lots more stories, so check it out, because you'll get to know members you probably don't know that well. And we actually have some pretty curious individuals in our community about whom you should be curious, and a well-told story. So check that out. Bethel Instagram. Anything else? Cool. Page 211. Yeah, sure. I got a couple over here.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nira le'ein nasa v'cheso kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kilot hakol Levado yimlov nora vehu aya vehu ove vehu yeh betifara vehu yeh betifara vehu echad ve'ein sheni leham shilo lehakbira Beli reishi, beli tachlit, velo haoz ve'hamisra, velo haoz ve'hamisra, vehu eli ve'chai goali, ve'tur chevli ve'yetzara, vehu nisi umanosli, menat kosi beyom ekra, menat kosi beyom ekra, beyado afkid ruchi, beyedishan ve'ayira, ve'imruchi geviati, Adonai li velo ira. Adonai li velo ira. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone should wash their hands actually with soap and water, because that is what will keep you safe. And then we have a kiddush. Please do wash your hands.
Did you find these?
come on up here, folks. Let's do this together. No. Not where folks can see you. You can. You know you're on live stream, right? Whispering on stage. All right, come together. Let's do Kiddush. ליום השביעי שבת אדוני אלוהיך, לא תעשה כל מלאכת אביך ואחיך ובנתך וגרך אשר בשעריך, כי איש אשר עשה אדוני לשמיים ואת הארץ ואת הים ואת כל אשר בם, וינח ביום השביעי. על כן ברך אדוני ביום השבת ויקדשהו סברי.
לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן.
אמן.
Y'all.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you so much for being here. It's such a delight.
Well, I didn't leave very far. For
Right,
now.
right now, right now.
For now.
Oh. We don't need these. Well.
Or we can just...
We could also step off the stage, yes. It doesn't like facing the wall. Bethany. She has a proposal defense day. Of this month? April? 20th of April, she defends her proposal. Remember that? How did you get the deal?
Here's the seniors. Like prep their answers. Oh, this goes with the...
I was wondering what that was.
It goes with the stick, the selfie stick, so...
You have to not contain their picture. That's the main trick, right? Okay, come in instruments. This is the reason I'm not out here. Again, just slightly more relevant to the program.
Like it. But I don't know for sure. You might not have to.
That's because you don't have.
We'll go through that. Did you see what I posted about it? Okay.
I saw that you shared it.
Yeah. So we played it nonstop. Like the entire dinner. That we did it was the kids were fighting over a pair of sunglasses, and so every time each one got to wear it while the song was playing. So like Emmett had the sunglasses on while the song was playing, and then it finished, and we hit repeat, and then Anab got to wear the sunglasses.